Now, I would hope with the, this new age of digital technology that we all know how to take a picture. So I don't think I have to go too far into that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be any expensive equipment. We're just getting pretty much the line work. So just make sure that you don't have any like harsh light or anything that's gonna like overexpose the image so you don't get all those lines that you worked so hard to create. Luckily today we got a nice cloudy day and it's letting in all this diffused light, so there's not going to be like really harsh shadows. So I mean, there's a little bit of shadow from this light. Turn that off. So you can see like it's really soft, like over it. So if I'm far enough away when I'm pointing this up, I'm not going to see like any kind of shadow from my phone. So that's good. That's about as much understanding I have with light. So just when you're taking the picture, make sure that you got some decent lighting. Cloudy days are great. Some nice natural lighting. So I'm just going to grab this. Just try to level it up. Make sure that, it's as straight as I can possibly get it. I don't want to be at an angle like this because, everything's going to be distorted. So I'm just going to try to be straight as I can so it looks good. And snap the picture. I'll go ahead and take a few more. Scan through those here in a minute and see which ones turned out the best. Okay, just like we did for the picture taking of the sketch, we're going to take the picture of the little paintings that I have over here that I'll be including in, like I said earlier, I have those in my little sketch here. So instead of just redrawing those in, I'm going to just take pictures of them and then we'll add them in later in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and get those pictures. And it's a little dark over here, and there's some cast shadows from the light source that I got going on right now, but these are going to be such a small part of the illustration that I'm not too worried about those. I feel like I can easily remove them, or they'll be just so small that it wouldn't matter. I'm also going to get this poster, because this poster is incredible, and it would be absolutely crazy to illustrate on my own. Alright, there we go. Okay, so I've got the picture in Photoshop now, and I'm just going to go ahead and optimize it so it's a little bit better for when I start painting. And the first thing that I want to do is crop the canvas, really, to get rid of all this extra information around here on the edges. So I'm going to hit this crop key, so C, and now I'm just going to kind of get rid of all that. And I'm probably overcompensating just a little bit, and that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is pull up my levels with Control L and just add in a little bit more white to the canvas to kind of clear up some of the noise here. And that may or may not work like I thought it would. Because what we're going to do is we're going to set this layer to multiply, and we're going to draw underneath the layer. So now when we draw underneath, let me grab a color. Now when we draw underneath, you can still see the color that we're producing and the line work over top of it. Now I got a lot of shading going on with this piece, so it's kind of distorting my color a bit. So if I'm, like me, I always am color picking my colors. So if I pick this color from down here in the shaded area, it's going to change my color, and it's going to keep changing it. And that's not really what I want. So that's why I did the levels, but I got so much shading in this, it's really really not going to work unless I want to really overexpose this, which I don't. So if you're really clean with your line work, you can do the multiply method. I use it to check my work. I don't use it there constantly. What I like to do is duplicate this layer, have it on the bottom, and I can just keep it on normal, really, and have it locked so that I don't mess with it at all, and then draw on top of it Now you see that if I get too carried away with drawing on top of it, I might kind of lose myself and not know where my line works originally was. So I can just turn this on real quick, on and off, and kind of see once again, oh, this cat's tail is not hanging off the edge that thick. It's really thin, so I can refine that as needed. So hopefully that illustrates it. And this image is a little distorted. So in the next video, I'll show you how I'm going to fix that. Okay guys, so I'm going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about here. And hopefully most of it is accurate, but you never can tell. I'm still learning. Okay, so we got a 2-point perspective going on here with the dresser, because we got a point all the way over here and a point all the way over here, and each side of that dresser is going off into those points. 2-point perspective. When you have 2-point perspective, you have vertical lines and diagonal lines. I don't know if it's safe to say you have horizontal lines like at the horizon, I think. I don't know. Okay, so anyways, I'm not going to get too much into that. But, so the dresser is like extruding from the ground. Bear with me here. It's extruding from the ground. And when things extrude up, those should be vertical lines. If they're diagonal lines, then you're creating the illusion of a 3-point perspective, and that's not what we want with this. So I can tell that they are diagonal lines by just looking at them, but just to check, we can grab this guideline over here and look. I mean, that guideline's pretty much straight, like it's right on, it's straight. I think we can agree that is straight, and that very far edge there of the dresser, it's going like way off in that direction, and that's not what we want. And you can see each one of these edges here, these 3 edges, this one, and this one, not straight at all. So to fix that, we're going to hit our crop key. So that's C. And we're going to go up here to straighten. Just click on this little rectangle. I don't even know how to describe it. The straighten key. And then what we're going to do is it doesn't really matter which one you pick, I think. But we're going to pick one of these edges here. And we're going to draw a line on it. So we're going to click and hold here at the corner. And then we're going to draw a straight line to the next corner. Look what it did. It straightened it up for us. Basically, how that works is you find a line that's, at a diagonal or something that should be straightened. You draw a line on it, and that tells Photoshop, hey, this line should be straight, going straight up. I mean, it's straight, but it's not going straight up. Did I make that clear? I don't know, but it needs to be going straight up, not at a diagonal. All right, and so if we check this, we can see straight there, and even over here, it looks fairly straight. So there you guys have it. There's a fairly simple way of fixing the image. And I don't think that was from me just drawing like really bad lines. That was probably from when I took the picture. It distorted it a bit because I didn't angle it that well. But luckily Photoshop's got us covered and can easily fix that up for us. Alright guys, so the first thing I did here was I drew out my perspective guidelines. And the way I did that was with the polygon tool over there in the rectangle drop down area. Basically you choose the polygon tool and change the settings to a star and make it indent by 99%, and then set the sides to something some kind of relatively large number. Like for me, I chose 100 for this one. And that just is how many lines are extruding from that star. If you want to learn more about all the basics and all that, check out my class on digital painting for beginners. I think that's what it was called. Okay, so the first thing I did after that was I kind of just started blocking in these colors. And I'm drawing over top of my sketch and underneath my sketch, as I demonstrated earlier. And you'll notice every so often I'll be turning on that top sketch layer that's set to multiply just to see where my line work is. And making sure that I'm relatively staying true to my sketch. Now, when I first drew the perspective guidelines, I realized that dresser was very wonky. I didn't use any kind of guides. I kind of just eyeballed it when I was sketching. Once I established my horizon line and drew in those perspective lines, I knew immediately that that dresser was distorted. As far as color choice, to be honest, I didn't really think too much about color. I was mostly focused on, is this value correct? I established my lights and darks. So there on the left side of the dresser, I said to myself, okay, that's going to be light. And everything on the left side of all these objects is going to be light. And on the right side, on the front-facing parts of these objects, those are going to be dark. So when choosing a color, I wanted to make sure the values for the right side were lower and on the left side were higher. And I wanted to keep those two separate, those two different value ranges. I also wanted to use a limited amount of black in this piece. And that's simply because I understand that I have this terrible habit of using black. And I think that just becomes with being relatively new to digital painting, and black's addicting. So, and white can be addicting as well. But I make my paintings really dark, and it's really not the case in real life. You don't see this jet black like anywhere in real life. If you want to make something darker, then put something light next to it. And I found often that by doing that technique, it has greatly improved the realism in my paintings. I had to keep reminding myself this is diffuse lighting. And usually when I draw a cast shadow, it's really hard. So for this one, I was like, gotta be soft with those transitions from light to dark. So when there was cast shadows, I wanted them to be really well blended with the light sides. As for the cat, that was really a last minute decision. He had just jumped up there right as I was finishing it, and I was like, even if I can't draw him right, it's worth it to put him in there because he communicates so much story to this piece. Without him, I don't think it would be nearly as interesting as it is, because there's really no story element. Viewers aren't really sure what to look at, I think. And I think having him in there definitely improves the overall composition. It doesn't matter about how poorly drawn things are. It matters about the emotion that you're communicating, and is that emotion communicated to the viewers? I don't know. I hope that makes sense, and hopefully that's not too cheesy. That's kind of how I think about going into art is don't worry about the struggles, just draw it. Now, what I'm not saying is be lazy. You definitely should still learn how to draw and work really hard at it. I mean, drawing is one of the basic fundamentals of art. And for me, it's definitely something that I struggle with. But I'm not going to let poor drawing limit my artwork, because I know that you can illustrate compelling emotions with abstract art. Throughout the painting of this piece, my cat would come and jump up on my desk and look out the window. And I'm glad he did, because it allowed me the opportunity to study how the light was affecting him. Now, I wasn't able to get too much, but one thing I noticed was his back was lit. The light's coming in from the window and hitting like all of his face. Wouldn't that be where the light is only hitting? So after studying it for a bit, I was like, where is this light coming from? And I realized, assumed that it was coming from the ceiling, because I looked up and the ceiling was fairly bright. And I guess for some reason the light source from outside was hitting the ceiling, and that light from the ceiling was bouncing down onto his back. I thought that was interesting, and that really kind of was in my favor, because he was kind of blending into the background a little bit, and having that contrast of putting light next to dark really helped make him stand out and give him a better silhouette. So with that, I definitely recommend learning as much as you can from real life and stealing what you see from real life. It's okay. It's okay, and you don't have to always be limited to what's in your head, because your art's gonna be limited if you don't take the time to get out and actually study the world around you. So you always got to be on as an artist, I think. For me, every time I'm outside, I'm looking at the shadows. I'm looking at the light source. I'm studying, the subsurface scattering in the leaves and all this amazing beauty in the world. And I'm taking notes. I'm taking mental notes in my head. Sometimes mental notes are enough, and sometimes I'll need a photo references or some other kind of means. But I always try to do as much as you can, even when you're not painting, to gather as much information as you possibly can, so you can have that information to pull from later when you're painting. My cat is going crazy at the door. I'm trying to do a thing. Leave me alone. Hey guys, okay, so we just got finished drawing, and I went ahead and put my poster and paintings up on the wall, because I actually did it all part of the demonstration, but I had a technical difficulty and it didn't record it. But that's fine. I can just do it again. And we're just going to do it with the poster, because I think doing all of them, I was probably going to have to edit it down anyways, because it can get kind of repetitive and boring. So let's just do this poster here. I got it here in this group, so I'm just going to hide it. And now how do I get that poster there? Well, first we've got to go to our image of that poster. We get our image in. It's looking a little distorted, as you can see. We want straight lines with our edges here. And as you can see, if I pull this vertical guideline over, you can see that it's not straight. Like, these edges are going way off in this direction, and we don't want that. So let's fix that. We could try the straightening tool like we did with our sketch, and that may or may not work. I've already done this, so I already know it's not going to work. And that's because the image is distorted from not just the rotation, but the angle as well, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does, but it is distorted. So we can get as you can see, we can get a relatively straight side with that straightening tool, and that works great. But over here, this other edge, it's not straight. So if we do the same technique with the straightening tool again on this side, it's just going to kind of flip our canvas around and not really resulting in the effect that we want. So in order to fix that, I'm going to go ahead and have it straighten on one side, and then I'm going to allow it to crop all the way. Make sure that you have delete crop pixels off so you don't end up cropping and deleting some of that information that you may need. So we're going to go ahead and crop that. And now we're going to hit Control T for our transform tool. And well, first let me draw a guide over here so I know what I'm working towards. I'm going to put that right on that corner right here. And then we're going to hit Control T to transform. And then we're going to hold Control and then click on this bottom corner edge, click and hold, and kind of just drag that out. I'm going to hold Shift so that it's going straight across. And you can see I can get that edge there pretty straight. I'm going to go ahead and make it straight to the of the inside edges of the poster, so not the border. We'll have to recreate the border, but yeah, there we go. So we got straight edge there, and let's check that, and that looks relatively straight for me, so that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter, and now let's check the top. The top needs a little bit of work as well. And how about the bottom? The bottom also needs a little bit of help. So let's do the same thing there. We're going to hit Control T, hold Control, grab one of these edges and drag this one up. I'm holding Shift for this one as well. So it's going straight up and nowhere else. All right, there's that fix, and let's do this one as well. Okay, that looks fine for what I need. So I'm going to go ahead and crop this to a nice straight rectangle around these edges. And like I said, we'll recreate the border so that we can accurately represent the poster on the wall. Because for this one, we'll have to delete it. Okay, there. So now we got a nice shot of our poster with nice clear edges. And now what I'm going to do is hit the crop key one more time. I'm going to go up here and delete crop pixels. And then I'm going to hit Enter and Enter. And then what that's going to do is delete all those, all that information that's hanging off, that's bleeding off the edge, and give us a nice clean rectangle. Because that's what we want. That's what we want for this. And then, before we drag this over to our project, let me show you what I did first. And that is, I'm going to pull up my guide so I know where to put it. And what I'm going to do is kind of place down a container for the poster. So I can go ahead and get the perspective part out of the way without worrying about having to do that with the actual image later. So, I mean, we'll still have to manipulate the image just a little bit, but it's nice to have a nice clean guide already on the page for us. So that's what we're going to do. We're just putting down a container guide, if you will. All right, so first we're going to grab our shape tool over here, our rectangle shape tool, and we're going to just pick one of these. I want to have it aligned with this, so let me fix my perspective here real quick. And we only need this right side perspective line, so I'm going to hit transform and just rotate that so it aligns relatively close to the top edge of my painting. Okay, that's relatively close to the painting, so let's grab our rectangle again. and we're just going to draw a rectangle on the canvas, relatively the size that we want it at. And now we're going to just line that up with the perspective guidelines. And to do that, I am going to hit A, or you can go over here and click on your path selection tool and make sure that it's the white one that's selected so that we can grab these edges. I'm going to click on one of these, and then I'm going to use my arrow keys to hit up, and it's going to give me a little message. We're not going to really read it. We're just going to say yes. And now I'm just nudging these little points into perspective guidelines, and I'm just using the arrow keys here up and down. Makes it really simple. Okay, that looks fairly okay. Maybe I could just make it a little bit wider, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna do these two at the same time so I know that they're straight. I'm just gonna hold shift and hit the arrow keys over a few times, and then I need to nudge these back down into place. Sorry if I'm going too fast. Okay, and let's just take a look at that. It was so much bigger. All right, let me just line this to what I already had since I was fairly happy with it. Okay, so we've got our nice little placeholder there. So what about the laptop though? It is, the poster is overlapping, and that doesn't make sense. So let's fix that. And there's several ways of going about fixing this, but this is how I did it. I took my lasso tool, the polygon lasso. So the layer that all of my drawings on, I am going to take a chunk of that laptop out. So we're going to just grab our polygon lasso, do an outline. A rough little outline of the laptop, and I don't have to get any more of that laptop than what's being overlapped by the poster. So now that we got our selection, I'm going to hit Control J to duplicate that selection. Now we got like a little chunk hanging up. I'm going to hit Control Z to put that back where it was, and I want to make sure that is overlapping the rectangle. I'm going to bring the rectangle down. Okay, so let's create the border. The first thing I'm going to do is hit Control J so that we have another shape layer. I'm going to go ahead and rasterize that though. And then I'm going to change the color so that we can tell it apart from the yellow layer. And next, we want to select the square. So hit Control or hold Control and click on the layer, the little square part, to select all the information that's on that layer. So that'll give us a nice clean line around our rectangle. And now we go to Select, Modify, Contract. And I wish there was a preview for this, but let's see what 20 pixels looks like. Looks pretty good, actually. That's pretty close to what the border width actually looks like. So now that we got a nice clean edge around, it's 20 pixels width all around. It's proportionate. So that's why we did it that way instead of just scaling it down, because if we scaled it down, it may end up looking a little distorted, if I am correct there. But so we contract the edges, it keeps everything in line where it should be. And now if we want to invert the selection so that we have that border, so hit Control Shift I, and that will invert the selection, and then we're going to hit just simply delete. And that's because so make sure that you rasterize the layer so that you can do all that, because the shape wouldn't work with that. That method wouldn't work with the shape. Okay, So look at that. We got a nice clean border. The colors are a little wonky, but we're not too worried about that right now. We're just worried about proportions. Okay, now we're going to bring in our poster. Finally. And it's really big, so that's great. What we want to do is create a clipping mask for this layer so that it is being contained in the green layer, just to make things a little bit easier. So I'm going to hit hold Alt, and in between the green rectangle we got here and the layer, make sure they're right on top of each other. And then we just click right in between, and that makes a clipping mask. And look at that. It looks fairly decent, right? But there's still a little bit of work. So we're going to hit Control-T to transform. And we're going to hold Control and just drag each one of these corners to the corner of the poster. All right, so now we have our border. It's the wrong color, so let's go ahead and change that now that we can focus on that. Now we're going to click on the rectangle. We're going to hit A to bring up these options up here and change the fill color to about a gray, because it's white in real life, but over there it would be... in that lighting situation, it would be a little bit more gray. And now the poster itself is a little wonky because the color over there isn't being matched. And so there's several ways that we can match the color with the same kind of lighting that we have on our illustration. But what I did is I just desaturated it a bit, because over here on this wall, it's kind of in the shadows, so I just desaturated it, and for the most part, that seems to do the trick. And then I can bring down the lightness a bit. Okay, so that works pretty well. But it doesn't look completely in line with the rest of the painting. So let's try to fix that. And this is how I'm going to handle this. I'm going to group that so all that information's there, keep it all together. I'm going to take a chunk of this wall. I'm just going to lasso around it where the poster would be. And then I'm going to hit Control-J. And then I'm going to hover it over top. As you can see, it's over top of our poster. And then I'm going to change that blending mode to, say, multiply. And you can experiment with this. We can try overlay if we want, but I think multiply looks the best. And then I'm going to make that a clipping mask to that group that we just made for the whole poster. And let's just go ahead and scale this up a bit. And that's a little too dark, so let's bring down the opacity, and we can turn on our hues and saturation layer that we got here at the top to check our values. Basically what I'm looking for here is just so that it's not blaring. So if it was at 0, we can tell that poster is kind of standing out. So I just want to make sure that it's roughly the same color as the background. So something along those lines. Maybe bring this saturation down just a little bit more on the poster. And the border, I'm actually thinking that could be a little bit wider. One last thing that I want to show you is that I was working on before I realized everything went to shit on my computer, was the depth created over here. As you can see, I've already got this completed with this one, but there is some depth. It's not completely flat like the poster is. They are kind of thick pieces of cardboard on the wall, so I want to illustrate that the best I can, and that is simply just going to take this one. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm just going to change that color, darken it a bit. Then I'm going to bring that layer below, and then I'm going to just nudge it over a bit and down a bit. And that's because we are seeing, so it's over off the right at the top of the horizon. So we're going to see the left side and the bottom side of that piece of canvas. And since our light source is over here, I've made the call that everything on the left side is going to be hit by light. So let's go ahead and brighten up the left side. And we're going to use clipping mask for this as well. Well, actually, we can do this a simpler way than using clipping mask. I could create a new layer and draw on top of that and make that a clipping mask to the depth part of this image. But I can save a step and just go up here and hit lock transparency, I think is what it's called. Yeah, lock transparency. And what that does is when I draw on that layer, it's creating that mask already. So that's just one other way of handling that. And there's a simple way to create some depth. Now, obviously, if it was a little bit more extruded from the wall, we would probably have to go a different route. But for something very subtle like that, and just duplicating that layer and bringing it below and nudging it over a bit works great. And since we're talking about adding textures and pictures in this section, let's go ahead and fix this monitor a bit. And what I like to do is bring in my own artwork, as you can see. So let's go ahead and open up one of my recent pieces. Here's a little pixel art that I did not too long ago. It was my first pixel art too, so I really enjoyed making this. Great, loads of fun there. So we're gonna hit print screen, and that's gonna print, capture everything on my screen. If you're on a Mac, I'm not sure how to do that. There might be other alternatives or software that can capture your screen. But for Windows, just hit print screen, and we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to create that just right over top of our main illustration here. And then we're going to hit Control V, and that will bring everything in. And look, brought me in on my other screen there. So that's funny. Let's get that out of the way. All right. So I'll scale this down a bit so I can see what I'm doing. Now, I'm just going to grab my marquee tool with the M key and then just select this screen and then hit Control J and then delete that bottom layer. And now we just have this side of the monitor. Just drag those off to their edges. And I'm just eyeballing this one, just putting it in the ballpark. I'm going to just change the opacity a bit so it fits a little bit better. There, we got traditional paintings, pixel art, a digital painting on top of a traditional sketch. We got everything. Alright, I think that's it for this one. So in the next one, we'll be finishing it up with some lighting effects. Alright guys, let's get into some lighting effects and finish up this piece. Before I get started, obviously I did a little bit of edits to the window there. I felt like it was pretty blown out, overexposed. That's something you'll often see a lot in photographs. It's how cameras work. They don't have a high dynamic range like our own eyes do. Because if you're actually looking out a window, you can see what's out there. It's not super bright like it would be in a camera. So yeah, with digitally painting and painting in general, of course, you want to represent that. You don't want the camera kind of effect. At least I don't. I mean, maybe you do, but that's kind of a personal style, I guess. And I think it also adds a really nice story element as well. I try to go for like a gloomy, cloudy, rainy day, and the cat's, he's stuck inside because it's raining out, and he's not out. He's not able to go outside and go on his patrol, so he's all sad. And let's get into the lighting effects. Let me just walk you through some of the effects that I've already applied to pull off this effect. So let's do that. Let's go one step at a time here. First thing I did was add levels. Usually this is my go-to effect when I'm like finishing up an art piece. You go down here to the adjustment layer icon, which is a circle like cut in half. And then you got this whole list of different types of layer adjustments that you can add. And they're on their own little layer. You can come back to them and manipulate them if you need to. I went more into this on my last class, Painting in Photoshop for Beginners. If you want to learn more about that, go check it out. But for just this, we added a levels layer. Here we go. You can see that I've slightly, just very so subtly, I've taken the midtones and darkened them just a bit. See, by default, it's at 1. And then I took it down to about 87, 88 is where it landed, and that's fine. So that's just adding a little bit of contrast, and I did the same thing with the highlights. I brought them closer in, and that's bumping up the lights a bit. So just adding a little bit more contrast to the overall piece. I definitely don't want to get too carried away with this because it can add too much contrast and too much black. I usually don't really touch the black anymore because I found that I was always messing with this one, and while it looks cool when I bring it down, it always ends up destroying my pieces because it adds too much black, and it only looks cool because I'm comparing it to what I just saw, and I'm just like, ooh, contrast, let's keep that. And I don't want that much contrast, especially with this diffused lighting. I don't think that would be the smart idea to go about. So very subtle, and you'll see much of these effects, they're just subtle. And then what I did next was I duplicated my levels layer and set it to overlay. Now what this did was it added just a little bit of contrast again, and it's adding more color, more saturation, because I have that overlay layer set as its blending mode. And you can see that there's just a slight oomph in color. And next was a little bit of a color balance adjustment layer. And I felt since that it was a cloudy day, I wanted the room just to be a little bit, just a touch gloomier. So I brought down the blues for the midtones a bit. And I could go in here and actually change the highlights too if I want. And then, or the shadows and the highlights, maybe bring up the yellows and the highlights, but I really just don't like diving into it that much, at least for this piece. So I am just going to do the midtones and just a touch of blue, and for the most part, it gets the job done. It's definitely pulling off the effect that I want. Okay, so here's the next effect that I did, and that's the little beam of light coming from the monitor. And that effect was pulled off by adding a new layer, setting that layer's blending mode to color dodge, and adding about this color of a blue, your mid-tone, mid-saturated blue, kind of a aqua color. And then I'll do this over here off in the corner to show you the effect, how I pulled off this particular effect. And that is, just draw on top of the monitor with a soft brush to create the kind of illumination effect. And then I got this little hard edge here with this light source, and to pull that off, just grab your polygon lasso, and then I took it from this corner, so we'll just show you here. And then I just grab a chunk of that corner and delete it. And that created a nice hard edge of a beam of light. Even though I don't think you would really see that in real life, but it adds a nice subtle effect for this piece. And the last effect that I did was add in a little bit of a shadow behind that monitor just to add in a bit of contrast.